A new episode of the Sean Widmer podcast. Thank you for tuning in. It is a Thursday morning when I'm recording this, and we have got an actual quick podcast today. It's not the 1 hour variety. It's going to suck up your time through the day because I know you're dying to get every single nugget that we offer you here on the podcast. It's just me today, so that's all you got. Back to talking with somebody again tomorrow. Okay, the hitters for you today. First of all, I want to say thank you for those of you who watch it on YouTube. The few of you who check out the YouTube right now as we offer another, I keep saying we, and I'll tell you why I say we here in a second, but you're getting offered another means to consume the podcast, the video variety. Thank you to the we in the podcast, my buddy Brandon, for hooking me up with some new graphics to try out today. Now, I want to tweak a bunch with them, but it's early. Again, I record these before 5 a.m., and so it's early for me to tinker with these. And he sent me these late last night, but we got some new, if you're watching the video, we got some new background stuff, which is really cool, and I'm excited about. So thank you to Brandon for that. He's concerning me right now. I'm going to talk about, I've got some music I need to talk about, some game stuff I need to talk about, some quick sports stuff I need to talk about on the pod today. But B. Rose, we talk about him on the podcast a lot. I talk about him a lot on here because I really like what he does. He does great work whenever he does anything creative. He's got his podcast, Bros Knows, which everyone should be listening to. He had a 40-some day in a row streak going of the podcasts, and it ended yesterday. In fact, it ended to the point where I didn't catch up on all my NBA stuff, which I love to do before bed, is just read every box score from the NBA games. Wednesday night is a busy night in the NBA, but I sat there refreshing my iTunes podcast app, my Spotify podcast app. I tried to FaceTime Brandon at 10:30 at night. I'm sure he was so excited about that since he's had a busy work week. But I don't think I missed it. I think last night the streak ended, so I've got to get him on to talk about this because I'm worried that B. Rose, now that the streak is done, the podcast disappears, where now there's not that incentive to do the next one because now what was causing him to do the podcast, which was this streak, is gone. So B. Rose, if you're listening to this, do not give up on the podcast. I love your podcast. I'm really hoping it keeps going. Please. Okay, things I wanted to talk about real quick. I had mentioned it yesterday, and I want to give a shout out to this. And for those of you who, I mean, you could just be, I guess, a fan of table games in general, of sports and table games. Maybe you have kids who are getting into games. I wanted to give a shout out to this because I went to my folks' house the other day. My dad gave me a box. I'd mentioned it yesterday of my baseball, basketball, football cards, which is really cool to look through all of those and realize, just, I guess, realize how much I was into sports cards as a kid. We talked enough sports cards yesterday. But in that box also he had something that it's really important to me. In fact, it's something that a few weeks ago my dad had asked me. He said, "Hey, you have this item. Is there any way I could get it from you to show some people at his work?" He's a teacher, and he's like, "Can I show some people and a couple other teachers this? Because one of them had mentioned something about it or whatever it was." And I go, "Yeah, absolutely. I'll go home and get it." Well, I came home. Now, this item, we'll get to in a second, is something that my dad got as a kid. And it's probably from, I was trying to do the math on it, it's probably from the mid-'60s. So my dad got it when he was a kid and used it as a kid and then gave it to me when I was very little, and I devoured this thing. Was like one of my favorite things that I owned. And it was cool because I loved it, and also it was my dad's from when my dad was a kid, so it had some value in that as well. And what it is it's a game. It's a baseball game, APBA baseball. If you know, you know. If you're an old head like me, you may have seen some of this stuff. Surprisingly enough, I looked up the company. They still make new games, and which I'm excited to dive into here this afternoon and look at what I need to purchase from them. But it's a game where you got a box filled with every single Major League Baseball player I was trying to figure out the season. It's got to be a season in the late 60s. Every single baseball player, and they have stats on their page. They've got info on what position they played, where they're from, blah, 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 year they were born, and all that jazz. So they've got this, and then on the card, they've got all these numbers, and those numbers represent rolls of dice. You roll dice, and you roll 2 dice, and if it's a 1 and a 6, it's 16. You go on their card to slot number 16. There's a number next to that. It's really intricate. There's a number next to that. That number then coincides with a number on a board, and it comes with these big, gigantic cardboard sheets that have all this information on it. And you get a cardboard page for no runners on base. You get one for guy on first base, guy on second base, guy on first and second, guys on first, second, third, guys on second and third, guys on first and third, all the combinations, right? So I roll the dice to get a 16. Oh, next to the 16, it says 30. I find the page with whatever the situation is for the base runners. And then you go to that page, go to number 30, and it says, oh, fly out. Okay, there's an out. Oh, single, runner advances to third, okay, on an error, whatever it may be. And that's how this game works. And it's all rolls of dice, these cards. It's super cool. When I was a kid, I played this thing way too much, and I was way too serious about it, to the point where there's somewhere out there are 4 little cuadernos, 4 little notebooks filled with seasons upon seasons upon seasons of me keeping box scores for this fake major league that I had made as a kid. And it's really cool. Well, I couldn't find it at my house, and I knew I had it, but I like I said, I couldn't find it. And so my dad asked me a few weeks ago, hey, where is this? I scoured my house for it. I went to places you should never go. I'm up in the storage space. I'm in every nook and cranny of my garage. I'm underneath our stairs where storage is, like pulling out stuff, behind stuff, dripping sweat, worried that I can't find this cool thing that my dad gave me as a kid that was in Venezuela and now brought back to the States. I'm nervous. My dad never brings it back up that he needs it. And all of a sudden, the other day, he gives me it back, and I was like, what in the heck? Like, he doesn't know I've been sweating bullets trying to find this thing. And he's like, oh, yeah, I found it. It was here at the house. And then I remembered my stinking brother borrowed it a long time ago because he wanted to see it because it was cool. It was my dad's. It's fun. We like games. He had borrowed it and left it when he lived at my parents' house and left it at my parents' house. And so it was still in existence, but I had just spent 6 hours of my life trying to figure out how to find it. Anyways, there's a fun story for you that's not fun. But APBA still makes games. And in fact, I was looking at their website, and I say all this to say, if you have someone, especially a kid who's got a creative mind, this is a big recommendation from me. And if you're an adult who likes games, this is a big recommendation from me as well. We played it last night here. Wednesday nights, I do a little game night at my house, and with just 2 of my buddies. And we played it last night. And I think Marcus and Mike enjoyed it. We had a fun time just kind of dinking around with it. But they make still, you're not going to be able to buy the version I have that has like Joe Morgan and Nolan Ryan. And I'm trying to remember some of the other names in there. Others. That helps out a lot. You're not going to find that version, but you can get updated rosters. They have 2020 stuff. They have baseball. They have football. They have golf. They have soccer. And they have hockey, which I actually owned hockey because as a kid, I thought hockey was the coolest sport. And I wanted to get a Pavel Bure card in the APBA hockey, which I did, and he was my favorite. So they make those games, and I would just throw a big recommendation out there. If you are a nerd adult who does have people who are willing to play these kind of nerd games with you, get it. But if you have kids, especially, this is a real fun one. Like, I'm already excited to look at this, figure out which one of these I want to get my nephew, because he would go bonkers for this stuff. And you can play it by yourself. So he can set it up, and if I get the football one, he can go Seahawks Rams, and he can play this game by himself, have the 2 teams, run it all out in his mind. As a kid, it's even better because you really visualize every single thing that's happening in this game. There you go. APBA baseball. Super excited about that. Happy my dad found it. Real happy that my dad asked me 3 weeks ago. Not as happy that he just decided not to tell me he had found it when he did and let me sweat it out for 3 weeks thinking I had lost this awesome gift he had given me, one of my most prized possessions, something that I want to hand down to a child at some point in my life are these cards. So that was, thanks, Dad, for that. Okay, 2 other things for you. Weezer released a new song today. I've been spending the morning while I was getting everything ready, listening to it. I'm telling you, and I mentioned it either yesterday or 2 days ago, this 2021 is going to be the year of great music, right? I've been hooked on that new Weeknd song, Save Your Tears. I think that's a smash. It's so good. It's a banger. as younger people would say. It slaps, as even younger people would say. And I loved that song. Well, then today I woke up, my favorite band of all time is Weezer. They released a new song, and All My Favorite Songs is what it's called. It's so good. It's an 8, after listening to it for 20 minutes, it's an 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 Weezer song, which is high praise from me because I'm a stickler on theirs. And 8 out of 10, here's how my thing works. 8 out of 10 for Weezer, for me, is probably a 10 out of 10 for just normal music because I like all their music more than I like anything else. But an 8 out of 10 out of the Weezer catalog, which is great to me. If you like them, you're going to like the new song. It kind of starts off with some Pinkerton vibes on it, and then they've kind of adapted over the last couple albums. Sort of Rivers Cuomo, the lead singer for Weezer, has kind of settled into his groove of what he wants to sound like for the rest of his time making music, and it's a great spot. And I almost feel like with the White album is kind of when he started settling into what Weezer is going to sound like moving forward. And it's a great sound. So All My Favorite Songs, listen to it today. If you despise Weezer, you're probably going to hate it. If you've ever liked them, I think you're going to like it. And if you love Weezer like I do, it's a great song. It's going to get you some positive vibes going into the day, give you some good feelings heading into the second half of the week. Okay, I'm bummed because I wanted to talk some NBA today. There was 2 sports things that caught my attention today. One, the Pac-12 commissioner, Larry Stone, is no longer. He is going to step down Larry Scott, sorry. Larry Scott stepped down. He is 12 years the commissioner for the Pac-12 networks. I don't know a ton about Larry Scott. I know he had the big TV deal that he signed the Pac-12 into years and years ago. It was a huge TV deal at the time. I'm looking here. It was $3 billion deal, big money. And then immediately, of course, the way things work, like I believe other conferences just had better TV stuff a couple years later, but that's kind of how everything works. I just know this. Larry Scott, your conference needs something new. It needs new leadership. It needs an injection of something because the Pac-12 is the conference of champions. It is where the best should be. And the Pac-12 is totally irrelevant in the 2 major sports that people follow, which is college basketball, college football. College football, USC was the best team in the conference at the end of the season in the rankings at 21, the highest ranked team from the Pac-12 this year in football. And I understand this year was so wildly different. The Pac-12 didn't play football games until I feel like Christmas. But they played enough games that they should have at least made some noise for something. USC was 5-1, but got up to 21 overall in the standings. Now, again, that's a hard one to look at because of how the football season played out. I mean, 5-1 USC, a 5-1 record to me is better than Florida's 8-4. You only lost 1 game. Florida lost 4 games, but they got to play 12 games, and USC played 6. There's something in there somewhere about how that was handled, and I don't think it was well. But the Pac-12 has not been super duper relevant in football overall the last many years. There'll be 1 or 2 really good teams. And again, I don't know that you can blame the commissioner for that. In fact, you can't blame the commissioner necessarily for that, but leadership maybe needs the injection to get things fired back up in the Pac-12, to get a spark going in the Pac-12. The other one, college basketball, I didn't realize this. I thought there was some top teams in college hoops in the West Coast. Obviously, the greatest team in college basketball is out here on the West Coast, but they play in the WCC, that being Gonzaga. I'm looking here at the West Coast teams in the top of the standings. They live there kind of by themselves. And then the next team you see from the West Coast is Oregon at number 21. 21. UCLA at number 24. Now, here's where this comes in. Now, I have not been following Oregon basketball super closely, but here's my concern. They're 9-2. Okay, teams above them have 4 losses. Texas Tech, 4 losses. Creighton, 4 losses. Kansas, 4 losses. Ohio State, 4 losses. Minnesota, 4 losses. These are 4-loss teams that are ranked higher than Oregon in the top 25. Now, I also understand it's top 25. Does it matter at the end of the season? Not really, because Oregon can get to the tournament, prove the, quote, haters wrong, win a bunch of games, and be like, look, pay attention to us. But that's the problem. Right now, I don't feel like they're getting paid attention to. I don't think the Pac-12 gets taken seriously overall. I just don't. I think they've kind of gotten themselves in a rut of mediocrity, and that's how they're looked at. And so when they are 9-2, when your teams are 9-2, when UCLA is 11-2 and ranked number 24, you're getting overlooked somewhere. Because you're still a Pac-12 team, but you're getting overlooked somewhere where they've got you ranked 24. So anyways, I say all that to say Larry Scott out as commissioner after 12 years. One of the things I saw in the Yahoo story about it that made me chuckle, I didn't realize the Pac-12 headquarters costs $7 million a year in rent. Seems a little extravagant. And also, Larry Scott had a $7,500 a night suite in Las Vegas. His use of a private jet, his nation-leading salary brought up an average $40 million over his tenure. These are things that he had incorporated into his lifestyle in his time as the commissioner. So he liked nice things. He liked nice things. He had made a bunch of money on that TV deal, and he liked to spend a lot of money from that TV deal. So I say all this to say Larry Scott steps down. I hope that it becomes a thing where the next commissioner comes in, there's an injection of excitement, there is a change in maybe attitude. Maybe there was some complacency after having the same guy for a long time. And again, this is me speculating a lot of stuff. But as a person who does not follow college football at all, I think it's pretty shocking that your best team in one of the power conferences is ranked in the 20s at the end of the season. And I do think the Pac-12 gets overlooked a lot in hoops and kind of is considered a mediocre conference. And these are things that need to change, and they can maybe change from the top in terms of how this conference is sold, how this conference is handled, and we'll see what happens. But I'm a big West Coast guy. I'm a West Coast proponent, and there needs to be something that changes out here so that it's not all about Gonzaga holding you guys up, holding the West Coast up, all about, San Diego States, the UNLVs, the mid-major schools being the top schools in a lot of these sports. BYU football, like there needs to be the Pac-12 rising back up. Okay, I also didn't see anything in the NBA last night because I was doing a little game night, and then afterwards I was worried that Brandon had fallen off the face of the earth. So, and I was kind of bummed out the Blazers game got postponed because of COVID. But what I did see last night in the NBA, as I was kind of hoping to talk more hoops today, what I did see in the NBA was the Brooklyn Nets losing to Colin Sexton. And I still believe the Brooklyn Nets are going to be in the NBA Finals. I think the Kyrie, who played his first game last night with KD and Harden, I think the Kyrie, Harden, and Durant combo trio is amazing. I do believe that. Harden didn't have the greatest shooting night last night, okay? They have a big concern. Let me bring up Harden's shooting numbers last night real quick because I want to make sure I've got those correct so I can give them to you. Kyrie played out of his mind. He was great. He was, let's see here. Kyrie ended up going, let me get the stats here for you. Kyrie was 37 points on 15 of 28 shooting. Durant had 38 points. He's a sniper, dude. That dude's an assassin on 12 of 25 shooting. But Harden only had 21 points, only 21 points. On 6 of 14 shooting, not the greatest shooting night for Harden, but doggone it, he was a triple-double. I didn't realize he had a triple-double. He had 12 assists and 10 rebounds. Now, they played 2 overtimes, so your stats are gonna get padded. When you play an extra 10 minutes of basketball, you're probably gonna get a couple triple-doubles in there, or at least some padded stats. I would look at that and go, okay, you played an extra bunch of minutes. Kyrie played 48 minutes and only had 3 assists. Potential problem. Last night, they ran into the buzzsaw that is Colin Sexton, who had 42 points, was 5 of 11 shooting from behind the arc, and had 20 straight points at the end of the game where he was red hot. Now, the Nets defense isn't amazing. They got rid of Jared Allen. They got rid of Karis LeVert. They got rid of some guys who could hustle on D. I think they'll make up for that eventually with some defensive stuff. They don't need a ton of stops because they're such a high-powered offense, but they do need stops. They couldn't get them last night, and I'm telling you, as someone who watched the game, they couldn't get him because Colin Sexton was on fire. Where contested, uncontested, off the screens with a little window, he was hitting everything. If it was coming off his fingertips, it was going in. You could see it in his face. He was in one of those moods where it didn't matter how good of defense you were playing. He was going to get his. He was going to get 42 points last night. on the best defender in the league, on the worst defender in the league. It was just an NBA player who was top-notch basketball player being a top-notch basketball player. So, first game with the Nets trio, very interested in following that storyline. They get the loss. Brooklyn's 9-7. I don't think that you ever push the panic button on a situation like this. They're going to gel a little bit. I did think they would win that game last night once it went to overtime. But again, you run into someone who's an NBA player who gets going like that. He would have torched anyone. The Cavs probably would have beat the Lakers last night. That's actually false. The Lakers are that good. Okay, that's it for today's podcast. I told you it was going to be 10 to 15 minutes. It's like 20 minutes. Sorry. Talk to you tomorrow.